A reading from Luke 5, 1-11. Jesus calls his first disciples. One day as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowding around him and listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken, and so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. I am a very unlikely person to be standing here in front of you in a pulpit today, and if you knew my history, and I'm glad you don't, you might understand why. I went for many years without any church being a part of my life, and if you were to ask me why, I guess I would really have to say it was a case of, well, if you don't want me, I don't want you. That was always the message I had received from my home church while growing up, whether it was intended or not. I still remember the day several years ago when I met Lori and Alicia in Target, and they told me about this church to which they had been going. I was interested, but I thought to myself, what if I go and the church burst into flames because of my presence? Or what if I go and they expect me to make some sort of declaration and be born again on the spot? I was a little apprehensive, and it took me a few weeks to actually decide to attend. When I did finally go, I was pleased to see how very normal the church was. It was very much like the churches I remember in my youth, minus the hate, and very much plus the love. In today's gospel reading, when Jesus calls upon Simon after filling the nets miraculously, Simon tells Jesus, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." It is an interesting response. It reminds me of the 2-week period one summer when I had a maid. I'm not the best housekeeper. I'm not bad enough to end up on an episode of Hoarders or anything like that. But when my friends start drawing little hearts and leaving their initials in the dust on my end tables, I know it is time to do something. So a few years ago, I decided to employ a maid, a very nice woman who also cleaned house for some friends of mine. The problem was I would get nervous about having someone I didn't know very well in my house, and I would clean up for the maid. And when she got there, there was nothing for her to do. It ended up that I was paying someone to sit and watch Oprah with me. There was nothing for her to do. It was not that she was not willing to do the work. I was the one unwilling to let her do the work because of my own fear and neuroses. I think it is the same sometimes for members of our community. They want Jesus in their lives, but they are afraid to let him see the mess in their spiritual house. I know this was true for me. People for some reason feel that they have to be righteous before they can meet Jesus, and they fail to realize that A, they may already be righteous in the eyes of Jesus, or B, they can't get there without the help of Jesus. Jesus doesn't expect you to do the work before you come to him. He wants to do the work alongside you. He wants you to invite him in, and he doesn't expect you to clean up for him. Now, Jesus always does the unexpected. He chooses this simple man, this self-proclaimed sinful man, to be his follower. After he fills Simon's net with fish, he tells him, Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people." Simon is a simple fisherman, and yet this great teacher, whom Simon will later recognize as the Son of God, has chosen him to walk beside him on his path. He doesn't choose a Pharisee, he doesn't choose a Sadducee, he doesn't choose anyone with prior religious training. He chooses a sinful man. You see, Jesus' message is not about exclusion. In incident after incident in the Bible, he chooses and sides with the outsider and the unfortunate. And I think that too many times, this part of his message gets drowned out by people who impose the customs of man onto the teachings of Christ. I know that many times when I have invited people to attend our services, the reaction is, "What? Me in a church?" Too many people have been told that Jesus doesn't want them when they are precisely whom Jesus wants. I think we in this church have a special mission. I think we forget, because we come here every week, how special and how unlikely our church is. The church came about because a few people saw a need within themselves and within their community for a place people could gather together and worship God. True, we are not that large, and our Sunday services average anywhere from 25 to 40 people, depending on the weather and the holiday season. But do you think that those early Christian churches, meeting in people's homes in secret, were any bigger? And think of the number of people who have come through our doors over the years. If we consider ourselves to be fishers of people, as Jesus surely wants us to be, then maybe we are practicing a kind of catch and release program. How many people have come to Mount Calvary and received the news that they are loved just the way God made them, that they are righteous in God's eyes, that their love is righteous? Those of you who have participated in any of our outreach events have seen how people's eyes light up when they learn about us. Whether or not they ever come through our doors doesn't seem so important when you see that seed being planted. When they first hear the good news that they are loved by God. We here have been told the good news, and it is up to us to spread that news in our conversations, on our Facebook, and in the ears of our loved ones. I mentioned the word righteousness earlier in this message. In Bible study, we have learned that righteousness is not following mindlessly a set of rules. Hosea 6:6 tells us God desires mercy, not sacrifice, and acknowledgement rather than burnt offerings. We acknowledge God by offering him our hearts and our good intentions. We are small, but our deeds are mighty, and they are righteous, and they find favor with God. Jesus wants us here. There is no other explanation for our presence, for our continued mission despite the many trials many of us have gone through. We minister to those whom Jesus would have spoken with, those with whom he would have broke bread, and those to whom he would minister and heal. We are his unlikely prophets, and he loves us so very much. Now, I've gone fishing maybe 3 times in my life. I tend to let Long John Silvers do the fishing for me. So I am a very unlikely fisherman, yet my God tells me to be a fisher of men and women. I once went nearly 15 years without attending a church, and I had a very healthy skepticism for organized religion. So it is very unlikely for me to be standing here in this pulpit. And yet here I am. And I have been told in very definite terms by so-called men of God that God does not love me and there is no room for me in his kingdom. Yet here I am claiming his love, knowing that a place in his heavenly mansion is assured, both for me and for all of you. So go forth and spread the good news. Maybe we can start a new slogan. Remember, don't ask, don't tell? Well, thankfully that old slogan is gone and needs to be replaced. Maybe we can start, just ask, go tell. Ask for Jesus in your life, and when you do, go tell others. Spread the good news, Mount Calvary. Spread the good news. Thank you.